regular meeting of the Hubbardston Planning Board. Planning Board meetings are broadcast live and digitally recorded. This meeting is being held both in person and virtually through Zoom or Google Meet pursuant to Section 20 of the Acts of 2021, allowing public meetings to be conducted remotely so that board and committee members, as well as members of the public, can participate remotely. So we call to order at 6:31. So first up on the agenda is public comments, and do we have any public comment for anything that's not on the agenda? Hearing none, we're moving forward to acceptance of minutes from the previous meeting. The minutes were prepared by the clerk of the planning board, who is also the land use clerk, and been made available to the planning board through the Google Drive, and are also included in the folder. So with that said, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the May 23rd, 2024 planning board meeting minutes as presented.
Here in a first, do we have a second?
Well, second.
Here in a first and a second, any discussion of corrections or clarifications?
Not from my end, they look perfect.
Yeah. All right. We'll hold on another moment, and then I will call a vote.
Right? Anybody online? Just kind of curious.
No, but in case somebody hops in.
I never know who might pop up.
All right, so calling a vote,
Steiger, aye?
Jack, aye.
and the chair is aye. So the minutes are accepted. So, moving down the list, we have new business. Now, in the drive, and in the binder, I've sent out to everybody a copy of what I would like to propose as administrative rule number 1, which is hopefully the beginning of a set of administrative rules in order to clarify how the board operates. This particular one is to clarify how public meetings go. Now, a lot of this is already in Robert's Rules of Order and state law, but the problem is when somebody comes to our meeting, we can't just be like, hey, can you read this 48-page book and then go through this trove of statutory references to find out what everybody's responsibilities and obligations at the meeting are? It just doesn't make sense. And we've certainly had some issues with how some of our meetings have gone because of that lack of clear understanding with some members of the public. So I would really like to put this forward with the board's support, with the caveat that we probably should hold off to the next meeting to actually vote on it, because Bill and John both let me know in advance that they weren't gonna be able to make it tonight, for very good reasons. And I would really like to have this go through with a full vote of the board, or at least having everybody on the board have had an opportunity to look into it. But honestly, even if this is something that we don't adopt as a formal rule, it really is best practices, and this is how we should comport ourselves in order to create defensible decisions. Because there are specific rules about how public hearings should be conducted in the case law in terms of people having an opportunity to present and people trying to get in information after the meeting closes. Like, all that stuff just needs to be made clear. We also have a pending application for a special permit, where I think if we had a document like this, it would have been really helpful to the applicant to understand the process. So this, most of this, give credit where credit is due, came from, I think it was the town of Mashpee. And their document on this was relatively old. So what I did is I went in and I updated it to well, first of all, reflect Hubbardston, and then also reflect some of the changes in the public meeting law that have happened since 2002 or 2004 when they had done this and adopted it. So We also have the option of having town council take a quick look at this, but my personal belief is this doesn't run afoul of the public meeting law, and it doesn't run afoul of that recent judgment that essentially says you have to let people call you names as long as they don't threaten you. So, I think it's in a good spot, so I wanted to open it up for discussion. Like I said, with the caveat that I would prefer to hold a vote, or rather, I would prefer to hold off on a motion until Bill and John have had an opportunity to either opine or not, so.
First of all, I wanna thank, the chair for putting this here together. More importantly, I think it presents not only, structure, but also, it's something that we can very clearly communicate, when we have, public hearings. I personally don't see any problems or issues with it. I've had an opportunity to peruse through this here. Not in depth, I do agree that it makes sense for us to have all 5 members present, and for us, and obviously our alternate also, he does, oftentimes participate in some of these items. I think it makes perfect sense, and again, I really appreciate the fact that you have not only taken the time to put this here together, but also review it and compare it against the items when it comes to from a legal perspective as to if it runs afoul of anything else. So thanks again. By the way, I think that 10 PM is kinda late, but that's okay. Not that we have not had meetings until 10 PM, but I think it's just really, that's kinda late.
Yeah, I believe the original version that they were using, it said 11, and I looked at that and was like, that's crazy, I don't wanna ever do
What time did
that.
they start, 8?
Yeah, I don't know if they started at 7 or 8. Well, we once had one of our meetings go until
11.
1. Well, I didn't get home until 1,
Oh, you didn't?
but
Yeah.
the meeting, it went solid in the.
Vertex meeting, I think it
Yeah, I
was.
thought it went after midnight. I don't know, I've tried to block out all of that time,
It was
and I
so
wish
long
we
ago.
had this
Yeah.
on the table when we were going through that,
So long ago, but it was a hard meeting to participate in. Everybody was tired and cranky.
Ask a point of clarification, would the board like me to add this to the special permit packet when we get to the public hearing section, when I hand them their public hearing notice?
Once it's adopted.
Yeah,
but not yet.
definitely.
Once it's
adopted.
once it's
Adopted,
adopted, would
Oh,
you,
yeah,
once we get to the public hearing section of their special permit, when I hand them their public hearing notice, I also hand them this
Yep.
document and say,
Sure.
this is how the public hearing is
should be
going to be.
published online and such.
Yeah.
Well,
We
will
need to
be published
communicate.
online, under the planning board, but I think that me physically handing it to them
Yep,
or emailing it to them, I have a paper trail if they received it.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and there's, it's in pretty plain language, but there's also been a lot of, well, I didn't know excuses on things that are pretty clearly published, so let's make it even more clearly published. So my hope, like I mentioned, is that this will be Administrative Rule 1. Administrative Rule 2 is going to be, initial deposits for consulting fees. And then from there, I think we might end up with a flow chart for special permits, but the immediate pressing concerns are, honestly taking back control of our public hearings, because it's been a big problem. And also, getting people to know right away ahead of time what the expectation is for consulting fees, because that keeps coming up, so.
Yep.
And hopefully in Administrative Rule 2, we have a working chart that we've been passing around in the office and passing with Bill Murray, and we're pretty close to having something that we can put together and say, yeah, if you're doing a special permit for this is what the estimated consulting fee is, so deposit it with your application, instead of having a process that has to go back and forth and take time and cause delays. So that's roughly where we're at on that, so anybody else have any thoughts, other thoughts before we move on?
It just makes sense to have policies and procedures communicate it to the public to expedite everything.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so moving forward into old business, we have deliberations on draft special permit for Paper Crane. So we had held the public hearing on this, previously, and, at the public hearing, we accepted evidence, and then we closed the public hearing, which means we can no longer accept any additional evidence to decide on this, and no additional evidence has been presented. So based upon, the request of the board, Mr. Murray prepared a draft special permit for us to decide upon. So, recognizing that we do have a special permit, quorum tonight, including the associate member, but that any vote on a special permit would need to be unanimous for granting it. We have this draft document placed in front of us. Mr. Murray has reviewed it, Patricia's gone through it too, and it's also been sent to the applicant to go back for comments. And this version has a couple small tweaks from the one that was originally put in the drive, and the most meaningful tweak is this one has my name spelled correctly.
Oh, and the correct town clerk, that was the other one.
But other than that, it's substantially the same as the one that's been in the drive for the last week or so. So there's a couple questions. The first one, I guess, being, this is the permit application that is in front of us. Is there anybody who would like to suggest that we waive the reading of the permit in its entirety?
I will make that suggestion.
Is there anybody who objects to waiving reading the entire permit into the record?
I do not. One thing I would like to ask indulgence of the chair is that we granted still a few more minutes to
Yeah,
complete
absolutely.
the reading of this here,
Not a problem.
especially the finding section. I mean, Peter, I don't know if you have any objections.
I don't.
Okay.
All right, yeah, so we'll,
I already read this.
we'll hold for a couple minutes in case, well, it's always good for us to verify to make sure that, this is the actual official copy that we're voting on, so we all should take a moment. If it's, you leave them on, and if it's signed by a quorum, then the quorum is also a majority, it's fine. Yeah. didn't see the first time I read through it that Bill Holman's name got abbreviated under members eligible to vote. It makes no substantive difference in the document, but.
Oh my god, shortened to Bill.
No, just WM, which is the abbreviation.
Mr. Chair, I have a question,
Mhm.
maybe for our clerk, under 7.10,
Mhm.
2,
Yep.
page 6. Have all fees been paid, all expenses been paid?
All expenses have been paid in full.
Okay.
He owes us, is it due? No.
Okay, thank you.
No, he was very on top of making sure that checks and payments.
Just states that,
Yeah, no.
before he records, he has to pay us. And I'm just
Yes.
curious
Yes.
whether or not there was an outstanding balance. Thank you.
No outstanding balance for Bowie Virgil's paper crane. Sorry, we should have stated that.
So when you're all set, making sure it matches up with the electronic version, just look up and let me know. All right, so if this matches what the wishes of the planning board were, then and matches the online version, then I would suggest that somebody make a motion consistent with the last paragraph of the permit.
I would like to make the motion that this board at this time grant the special permit as indicated in the document that we have just read. Very specifically, that is to grant the petition for the continuation of the special permit, Article 7, and use the permit for commercial marijuana facility, subject to the findings and the conditions presented in the document.
All right, so hearing a motion, do we have a second?
I will second.
So hearing a first and a second, calling for discussion. And to kick off the discussion, first of all, I would like to thank the applicant for really working with us on this, because there was a lot that went into this process, and we had a lot of questions, Bill had a lot of questions, and the applicant really did a great job being available for us and being willing to work through and establish a process that made sense for everybody. So definitely thank you to the applicant on this, and also thank you to Patricia and Bill for the significant amount of work that they had also done on this. Patricia in the office and Bill working directly with the applicant to get all those questions answered. Because I think we all know that that our bylaws didn't really contemplate the idea of a renewal special permit, so they did some great work making this process efficient for everybody, but there was still a lot of work that went into it. Further discussion? All right, well, in that case, I'm gonna call a vote, and recognizing that all members are voting. We do have a special permit quorum present, and that this does require a unanimous vote to pass. So calling the vote,
Steiger, aye.
Dak, aye.
Russell, aye.
and the chair is aye. The application is approved. So our next task will be to sign a copy of it.
Your name is spelled correctly?
Yes.
Perfect. Just that. he already prepaid his postage, so I'll send those out.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's, just double check the flip chart to make
Yeah,
sure
I think
that-
those are the last, like, final, and then the appeal period starts once the decision
Yep.
goes out.
Yeah, the appeal period being the important part.
Yeah, the 20 days.
Thank you.
And your pin.
Thank you.
You know, still my good pen.
Thank you.
For me.
Alright, well, thank you everyone for your work on that. So moving down the list, we are already at item number 6, which is matters not reasonably anticipated by chair. So, regrettably, last evening, I ended up having to go to the board of directors meetings for one of my publicly traded clients. So I had no option of saying no to that, so I got to miss the town meeting. But I've heard a couple of different accounts from it, but the short of it is, the battery energy storage bylaw did not pass. And currently in Hubbardston, battery energy storage systems are now allowed by, well, not now, are still allowed by right, not subject to site plan review or special permit in all districts. Which honestly isn't that bad of an outcome, because I know when we had started the battery energy storage system process, the goal was to try to make something that was enabling. And the public has opined, and although I wasn't there for all the machinations, the end result is the public chose to take no action and not impose any kind of restrictions on these projects. So I guess we can survey the public or let the public come to us if they think this is something that we need to get back involved in. But otherwise, there's now a really broad use provision that has a possibility of driving some meaningful possible tax base growth without putting a drain on public infrastructure or adding kids to the schools or any of that stuff. So perhaps the way to look at this is to not look a gift horse in the mouth.
Well put.
So, if anybody feels strongly about this, we'll certainly pick it back up and work on it. But if the public stated its position, I don't. You should kick him out. Kick him out. So, with that being the case, I think that's where we're at.
Mhm.
So, I don't know if anybody feels any differently about it.
Yep.
Two more people wanting to join the call. Aaron Cohen and Joe Eddy.
Yeah, don't. Yep. All right, so, anybody else have any matters not reasonably anticipated by chair? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank Patricia for working with me. About 35 minutes ago, we submitted 6 Community One Stop for Growth applications, which are different planning projects and kind of pre-planning projects for the community. We submitted to go and look at an overlay district over the sand pits to propose potential uses which was very much supported by the gentleman who just purchased the land, a wireless communications study, a reconstruction of New Templeton Road, a site plan review,
And special permit.
special permit review.
And on top of that, adding in e-permitting, so that instead of them coming into my office to do stacks and stacks of paperwork, they do it all online, so if they miss something, they cannot go on to the next step kind of situation, so that's been added into the grant as well.
Nice.
And some sidewalk, roadway, and light enhancements to this part of town. I'm not super holding my breath for any of these, but we have applied, and that's all they asked of us. So we shall see, and we will keep you in the loop. I'm hoping that maybe closer to the fall, we can sit down and reevaluate our project priority list for when future grant funding or DLTA opportunities arise. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so that is all I have for matters not reasonably anticipated by chair. Any additional public comment from anybody who is not one of my college drinking buddies trying to log into the meeting? All right, so hearing no additional public comments, let's move on, which is to entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Here in a first, do we have a second? Here in a first and a second, it's non-debatable. Calling a vote,
Steiger, aye?
Dak, aye.
and the chair is aye. Well, thank you all for coming. It's, I believe we just set a record.
Yeah, thank